lot of people believe that once they go into the cloud and they're using a SaaS service, that their data is protected, and that just isn't the case.
Be it Google Cloud, be it AWS, be it Microsoft Azure, be it Office 365, be it whatever, they will not back up your data.
With the current kind of geopolitical situation with US and Europe and tariffs that get announced now, right, and everything, certain kind of data might not be future-proof in the big hyperscalers.
Did you see that Google is having a shopping spree at the moment, that they are purchasing a small company for the tiny amount of $32 billion? It's called Wiz, W-I-Z. They are doing security, basically, but for cloud environments.
There's this idea of this shadow infrastructure that's happening not just within academia, but within companies as well. So developers just can't be bothered waiting for somebody to provide them with a VM. They realize on their Crumb-to-Me credit card, they can just go away and spin something up in one of the cloud providers, and they just start building stuff there. There isn't any control around that at all.
Hello, everybody, and welcome along to this podcast. Today, just a quick moment at the start. We're quite pleased and proud to have been named 2025 NetApp Partner of the Year. And as NetApp sponsored this podcast, we figured we'd give them a bit of a shout out. Yes, thumbs up, everybody. Oh, now just showing off. Christian Moan, I know you can do that as well because you've got a Mac. Come on. Or maybe a love heart or something. I don't know. Anyway. But yeah, so we've been NetApp partners since 1998, and I think we sell an awful lot of NetApp around Europe. Balloons, good work. So thank you very much to NetApp, firstly for sponsoring this podcast, but also for 2025, naming us 2025 EMEA European Enterprise EMEA LATAM Partner of the Year. And thanks for choosing the really long title. Okay, so moving on from that, thanks everybody. I just wanted to introduce our guest for today, which is the lovely and very talented Lara Matthews.
Hi.
Hello, Lara.
Pleased to be here. Hi. Hi, Tony. Hi, everybody.
You can be louder. It's good. So now, Lara, I'll introduce Lara briefly, but if you could tell us what you do. You're essentially a backup consultant for the UK, yes?
Yes, I'm one of the solution architects within the UK. I live in Scotland, and I've been with Proact for about 12 years now, but a few years ago, we started specializing a little more. So I'm what's classed as the subject matter expert for backup and data protection within the solution architect team within the UK.
A subject after my own heart.
Indeed.
Yeah, but no, lovely. Yeah, because and we worked together for a fair few years. Actually, is when we were both pre-sales in the UK. So this week we thought we'd discuss something that, and I think to a certain extent, I think kind of everybody uses this these days. In the fact that every business uses this, and I'm talking about SaaS services. So we've all been using SaaS services primarily, I would think, since COVID. So in some way, shape or form, most businesses use SaaS services because of that. Certainly there was a big rise during the COVID period, but Lara and I discussed this, but there's still a lot of confusion about backing up of SaaS services. So what are your thoughts on this, Lara?
I think a lot of people believe that once they go into the cloud and they're using a SaaS service, that their data is protected, and that just isn't the case. So I know that specifically with Microsoft 365, which is probably what you were talking about when you say going into COVID, a huge amount of people moved immediately to 365. They had to do that very quickly, without a lot of planning, because everything was so unexpected. And so that suddenly their data is somewhere. And yes, it's highly resilient. Yes, it's highly available, but it's still the customer's data. And Microsoft are very clear that there is a division there with a shared responsibility model whereby they will look after the platform and the customer will look after their data. And I'm seeing that a lot of customers still think that they are protected in some way. And there is really no backup there unless you specifically enable something. It's you have at best the recycle bin. But if somebody goes in and decides that they're not very happy and they want to leave and they delete everything out of their mailbox and then empty the recycle bin, you've got no way of getting that back unless you've got some kind of backup.
Now that's bizarre, isn't it? And I think that's the thing. And this isn't just Microsoft, actually. I mean, the all cloud providers, and I think by all means, correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys, and Laura, that all providers tend to have a shared responsibility model where they say, we do the platform, you do the data. So no matter what you're using, be it Google Cloud, be it AWS, be it Microsoft Azure, be it Office 365, be it Dynamics 365, be it Salesforce, be it whatever, they will not back up your data. And that isn't very clear in the majority of the things that they give out. So because they sort of say, oh, yeah, highly resilient, it's highly available, but they don't mention about the fact that if you want to go back 3 days and look at something that you may have changed, you might not be able to get to it. And I hadn't even thought about the fact that people might be manually going in and deleting their own email in Office 365. I was always thinking of a bad actor. So
what's the difference?
One's bad.
For the one, you know that he's going to go to another company. And for the other, you know that it's not about the company, but only about the man.
Yes. But the effect is the same, right? It's
Absolutely.
If someone deletes something they have access to, be it through a compromise or something they've been given access to, the end result is the same, right?
Data loss.
Yeah, I mean, I run my own. That's a personal email thing on Google Workspace, right? I can't go to Google and say restore that email that I just deleted. There is no way to do that, right? So it's the same here as well.
Yeah, and I think that's it. People sort of assume, oh, it's fine, I've got the recycle bin, and yeah, you kind of have. And I think with Office, I'm right in saying with Office 365, if you put stuff in the recycle bin, it goes to the recycle bin. If you delete the recycle bin, it goes to the admin recycle bin. But even then, it's only there for a period of time. Thank you, Christian Lehrer. Good thumbs up. But it's only there for a period of time. And you have to know you want it back if you want that recovered. Is that fair, Christian Lehrer?
I believe it's 30 days as standard, 90 days as extended. Is it? Christian will probably be able to tell.
I don't know about the time frames. I just know the general way of deleting things.
Yeah,
is exactly like Tony said.
And you've got to buy the extended one, I would wager, knowing Microsoft. I bet it's a different licensing level or something else on those lines.
You probably have to pay for the extra storage space. You might just be able to turn it on, and then suddenly you find your bills just go up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing with that is, if I now go into the Teams rooms that I have access to, the file areas in Teams that I have access to through my account, and I delete something that's just randomly, just something. When is someone going to figure out that file was deleted? And how long does that take, right? It might be half a year from now that someone needs that old contract or whatever it might be, and then it's not there. And by that time, you don't have it in any sort of recycle bin anywhere, and no one notices, and it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. And let's think, if we think about it, if we forget the fact that this is a SaaS service for the moment and think about what would happen if this was on site, because backup guys are used to backing up stuff that is present in their business, and businesses are used to, in the nicest possible way, shouting at their backup guys for not having backups of stuff that's within their business. But really you would go, oh no, I definitely want to keep that for X. I want X days of dailies. I want X weeks of weeklies. I want X months of monthlies. I want maybe even X years of yearlies. And you would keep stages of that data, and you would always maintain that. But you don't get that with SaaS-based services. You don't have that degree of control.
No, and that's something I find really strange, is that people seem to almost devolve responsibility as soon as they put stuff into the cloud. And I'm always amazed, because I think, if you've got SharePoint, if you've got Teams, if you've got OneDrive, what's different about that from when you had file server on on premise, and you would never think, oh, I won't bother backing up that old file server. We'll never need that information again. But you put it into Teams and suddenly it becomes, that's fine. It's all safe. It's all secure. And it just really isn't. And as you said, Tony, we're not having a dig at Microsoft 365. It's across the board. There's Salesforce. They did put an announcement out quite a few years ago now saying we are not backing up any of your data anymore, because initially they did, and then they realized that they just couldn't afford to continue to do that. So they announced it once, but I don't think they make it very clear now. So you have to be aware that anywhere you're putting that, you've got to be able to back it up. And I do wonder how councils and other organizations like that are being pushed towards more SaaS services for their reps and bens and such, like how they then back those up as well. Because whilst a lot of these do have APIs open so that the backup software can get in and you can back it up, some don't. So then what do you do at that point as well?
I think that's a really good point, because at the end of the day, we sort of assume that, you can back up anything. And the answer is, you can only back it up if the SaaS provider exposes an API to allow that to happen. So again, we're going to use Microsoft a lot as an example, but that's because it's an example that everybody understands. But let's say, for example, Teams you used to be able to back up Teams. Sorry, you didn't used to be able to back up Teams via Office 365. Then you were able to back up Teams when they exposed the API to allow that, but the API did not allow you to back up chats within that. And then a year or so later, they then exposed the API that allowed you to back up chats. So now you can back up Sales, SharePoint and Teams and email and the chats within Teams. But that's evolved over the period of about 5 years. It didn't appear like that.
And it's changed.
So everyone was backing up their email, but nothing else.
But it's changed as well, because for a while you were able to back up chats. Now it actually costs you to back up the chats, because Microsoft are doing it through a Graph API, and they charge for every 1,000 accesses to that. So if people want to back up their personal chats, it can cost a lot of money if they're looking to pull that through this API all the time. So
that's the primary
it's constantly
use of
changing. It's constantly changing how many of the APIs are exposed, what can be backed up, what can't be backed up. And that is quite confusing. And it does make it difficult when you're trying to protect all of your data.
Does Signal allow you to back up your Signal chat? I'm asking for the US government here.
Yes, you can set up backup in that, and you can send it to a Google Drive, perhaps.
Perfect.
Okay,
then
great.
you can open up with your Gmail account directly.
Exactly. Export it wherever you like.
Perfect.
I think you can send it to there's probably a Chinese website you can send it to as well from time to time. Although to be fair, the Canadians are probably just as happy at the moment, so send it to them.
Oh man! But when we're speaking about backing up SaaS solutions, how do we do that now? Regarding from the our classic backup, maybe to disk and then to tape or whatever. How do you do it with the SaaS applications? Do we do that like the way back to our on-prem and then to our LTO tape, or is it more common to also do that in the cloud but with a different vendor, or what do you see there?
I see it, all of those options. I think that the backing up on-premise is quite onerous because you're pulling everything down, and the way that Microsoft allow access, they do throttle the bandwidth, so it can be difficult to pull all of that data out. So I'm always suggesting to customers these days, if they can, do SaaS for the backups of their SaaS service, at least specifically for 365, because it's usually faster, and also you're just not having to worry about pulling all of that data down onto your on-premise environment. I have a number of customers that do that. They feel that makes it more secure, that they know that they've got the data and it's safe, and they can recover that data if they need to be. But a SaaS service is usually the simplest way to go, and quite a lot of them still offer fairly good deals in terms of you pay per user, but you get quite a lot of storage within that as well. So it depends how you want to do it, but some SaaS services even allow you to do it cross cloud. So you would take it out of Azure and put it into another cloud provider. So you can do it any way you want, really.
Yeah, but this is it. But I think the key element here is, well, there were a couple of things related to this, but let's stick with that one for the moment. People don't tend to understand, or IT guys maybe spend a lot of time dealing with this, so they understand a little bit more. But maybe the financial team maybe don't understand that pulling data from cloud providers costs.
It does for if you've got a virtual machine running in the cloud. It doesn't if you're taking it out of 365, because what you're doing is you're just taking it the same way that you access it as a user. So there is no egress costs there.
Not through 365, but for other services.
For
maybe
other services,
Salesforce might.
They might.
But the point is, if you're pushing, let's say, for example, you decide to do an online document management system, and you decide that you're going to send your business in that way, you need to find out whether pulling that data out of that system costs you money, because it may well. And also, you need to find out whether it's going to slow down the amount of, it'll take you 3 days to transfer the data out every week. This sort of stuff. How much is it throttled? These are really important questions if you decide to adopt a SaaS-based service that people don't really maybe think about.
Yeah, there are some other things there as well, right? Because having a backup of the data is great. You need to have that. But the problem is also that if you're doing everything in M365 and you take the backup down on-prem to have your own copy of it, fair enough. But where do you restore that to? Well, you're going to have to restore it into a M365 again. So you're going to have to transfer it back again, which will also take time. So having it located within the same kind of, perhaps in a different tenant, but in the same Azure environment or M365 kind of data center would make that restore process easier as well. But that's also something that if you put everything into Salesforce and you decide to start using something else, you can't restore your Salesforce backup into a different vendor's SaaS solution either. So how are we going to work with that? So these things are, these SaaS-based things are often pretty locked into how you can manage your own data once you put your data into that service as well.
Yeah, there'll be a proprietary design.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a risk. And this goes on to, do you think that most businesses choose their SaaS services on the basis of advice from their IT department?
Probably not.
I'm going to say probably not, because most people will choose their SaaS service on the basis of the ability of the SaaS service. They're not necessarily choosing on the basis of whether we can back it up or not, or how quickly it will be to get the data back, or how portable it is to get the data out. So I would wager that, and I would also wager that the likes of Salesforce and other providers, I'm maybe doing them a disservice. I apologize if this isn't the case. Please let me know. But their design is proprietary to them, therefore is not instantly portable to various other providers that may be their competitors.
I think that's true, but then I think that is probably still the case on-premise systems as well. Somebody picks an application, they are not going to, it's going to be a huge amount of work for them to move to another provider that provides similar type of application. It's going to be a big migration process, isn't it? And I do think it's something that you need to think about, especially with 365, that is the only way that you're going to be able to recover. But the advantage of the SaaS services is that they are very available and resilient, and that you would hope that, given the number of data centers Microsoft has around the world, if a whole area went down, there would still be the ability to run that service somewhere within the world. It would still exist, which might not be the case with some other applications.
Absolutely. But also, we've touched on this last time around, right? With the current kind of geopolitical situation with US and Europe and tariffs that got announced now, right? And everything. certain kind of data might not be future-proof in the big hyperscalers. But if you've done everything, gone all in on 365, you don't really have any option to do anything else. It's kind of hard to take a M365 backup of all your mailboxes and restore it into an on-prem mail solution again. So we're as a society, we're kind of building our resilience on a few vendors that do something, and we kind of trust that they're going to be able to do that forever. That might not be the case. So it's a difficult thing to navigate, right? It's difficult to figure out how to navigate the current climate and the hyperscaler things. But it's the same with any SaaS application, really. You fire up a web browser and you put your data into a web page, and you don't know where the data is stored. You don't know how it's stored. You don't know how to back it up, and you don't know how to restore it somewhere else. So you're kind of giving governance of your data to someone else while paying them to do so.
Yep.
So
and you're relying on them.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 kind of thing, right?
You're relying on them conforming even to all the laws in your area related to it. So all the GDPR stuff and everything else on those lines, and DORA and NIS2, you're relying on the fact that they're taking care of all that for you. You're just giving it to them and saying, right, okay, there you go. And I'm paying you for the privilege.
They are having the certificate for it, so that's fine. But actually, as a very bad backup and restore concept, you could also use GDPR requests where there is no API exposed by vendors. So just saying, might take a while, but you should get your data at least.
Yeah.
Were you going on about sort of like the ability to delete people's data and that sort of stuff? I don't know. But
yeah, you have the right to get an information about what is stored.
Oh, sure. Yes,
on your behalf,
yes,
or on your identity. So you should at least get that information.
Just tell all your employees to email your provider and say, give me my data. I want to know what you know about it. I need a copy of everything I put into your system, and base it on GDPR. That's might not be the quickest way to get back, but it's a way, I guess.
It's a way, at least, yeah.
But don't companies have a way out of that? Essentially, if it's unreasonable, or you have already said that you don't keep that data past a certain time, then you're not allowed to request it, or they can come back to you and say, look, we published that we only hold this for 90 days, therefore anything older than that
something like
is gone.
Yeah. But they then have to make it gone. How many people do you know delete their backups after 90 days? So yeah, because otherwise, legally they have to produce what they. Is that right? I mean, they have to produce what they have if they have it.
If they can reasonably do it. So I believe if, say, you put everything to tape and it was sitting in Iron Mountain and it's 7 years old, that they can't request to go through every single tape to check that.
Just cut those.
Send me that bit of tape.
Exactly.
I'll splice it together on my own.
Okay, good.
Mixtape gets a new meaning. Yeah, nice.
That would be cool.
Oh man! Speaking of cloud and SaaS and the large hyperscalers getting bigger and bigger, I just wanted to drop that in. Did you see that Google is having a shopping spree at the moment? That they are selling or purchasing a small company for the tiny amount of $32 billion, increasing their security, their cloud security exposure.
$32 billion?
$32 billion. And before we go into the details, I think the smaller company has had a really interesting way of putting the price up. Last year, Google wanted to purchase them for $23 billion. And they said, nah.
Yeah, not enough.
That's not enough. We're gonna go public. They didn't, and now they get $9 billion more than like 12 months ago. It's crazy.
Oh, right. Okay. So they said they were going to float, and they didn't float. So it was almost like how do I describe it? Like a stalling tactic.
It seems to work. If it was a tactic or by accident, I don't know. But 9 billion more in a year, I think that's interesting.
So who are they and what do they do?
Company is called Wiz. WIZ or Z, however you want to pronounce it. And they are doing security basically, but for cloud environments. So it's not only for Google Cloud, it's also for Azure, AWS, all the large ones. And it's very interesting to see what Google is doing. I have the feeling that they are trying to compete with Microsoft in the security space, because some month or years ago, they bought Mandiant, which is somewhat comparable to Microsoft's Dart team, the incident response team of Microsoft. Now they purchased that cloud security vendor, which is comparable to all the Defender stuff that Microsoft is doing in the cloud. So Wiz is providing protection for integrated development protection, some cool stuff there. Also, they make visible your attack paths that are possible in the cloud. So they visualize what your highest risks are in your cloud environments, because that is oftentimes also very, very hard to see. As Laura said before, as soon as people put things up to the cloud, they often think, yeah, the cloud vendor will take care of everything. It's not only about data. It's also about security. It's basically the same thing. Companies think, oh, it's in the cloud, it's secure. I don't have to do anything anymore. That's not true. And companies like Wiz are helping with making that visible so that companies understand what their risk is there and help fix that. So pretty interesting, actually. And I think the strategy behind that is also pretty interesting.
Yeah, so because obviously Google are well renowned from the point of view that the way that they do open source work. So they do an awful lot of stuff internally. They tend to make quite a lot of it open source, or take part in a lot of open source projects to make things better and more secure and what have you. But I imagine they probably got quite a robust security-based infrastructure team anyway. They're a massive organization. So but you think this is maybe sort of adding on stuff like sort of MDR and that sort of stuff to cloud-based architectures they didn't have? Or just improves it?
I think it's not as much for their internal stuff or internal operations. It's more directed into customer direction. Let's say, for example, they were you have storage account or whatever the Google or AWS pandas, like an S3 bucket or whatever, and you leave it open. There's a misconfiguration somewhere, and maybe within the normal configuration information about that, you have 10,000s of alerts, and that would be one of them. And they claim that they can basically make that visible because that storage account or S3 bucket is available to everyone at the moment. And therefore, this should be the first thing that an IT company should focus on to close, stuff like that. Or in the development process, where they say they can even do some vulnerability management while coding, because they are if they put in some dependencies to developers and they have a vulnerable version in their dependency, then they would directly show that and say, you shouldn't do that in the first place. Please take the current version of your dependency software. So pretty interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to fold that into kind of the GCP platform itself, and kind of use it as a way of securing their customers in that space, which is interesting. I don't think they'll end up with doing an EDR product for desktops, but it's about hardening the cloud's part of it. And I guess that's also why they acquired Mandiant, right? To have an incident response team inside their own cloud offering, like Microsoft does as well. The really interesting part there, besides Wiz being an interesting company and having really, really interesting technology, also in the cloud native space on the Kubernetes and vulnerability scanning and dependencies, as you mentioned, but it's also that Wiz is also an AWS partner.
And a Microsoft partner.
Yes, but it's now controlled by Google. So... Okay, how does that work? I mean, Microsoft have their Defender stuff.
Have you got your tinfoil hat on again?
Always.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Just checking.
But Microsoft have the Defender thing. Now Google have Wiz. where does that leave AWS?
And that is exactly the question I also had. That's so interesting. AWS is like getting back from trying to compete with Office 365, even acknowledging and improving and using it or 365 on their own. Now we have that permission and cloud security stuff that AWS is not part of, and I don't know what they can purchase to go into the same scale. So that's really interesting to see what will happen there in the coming years.
I'm going to say where are Google smashing it at the moment? Obviously, they're doing extremely well with regard to their search-based stuff and a number of other offerings. But I don't know about you, but I see GCP just doesn't seem to hit on my radar at the moment and hasn't done for some time. Is that just because they're just focusing on areas that I don't really tend to deal with, or is it, or are they just not that popular maybe over in Europe?
I don't know.
Have they hit on your radar much?
No.
Do you get many customers going, we're in GCP?
Not much. We have some. They're also. I don't think we're that far off the first GCP data center in Norway. Actually,
okay, good.
We're pretty close to opening that, as far as I've heard. So that might change things. But here again, Microsoft Azure is. Norway is a Microsoft Azure country, M365 an Azure country. Wow. So
we've now got cloud providers by country.
Yeah, it's insane.
So when did Microsoft buy Norway? I mean, when did that happen? I don't know.
Only for the energy.
Yeah, we have this small wealth fund as well, which is kind of useful. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. GCP, I also see it sometimes, but when you compare where the three companies come from, I think it makes sense that they are number 3. AWS basically was the first with all that cloud infrastructure and making it publicly available. Microsoft has that very, very strong foothold within the enterprise, and companies tend to use that what they are already known to. So that is why they are very strong number 2 nowadays. And Google, you're searching with it. They really have to build trust and stand out as a viable solution, because they don't have the licensing benefits, they don't have the being first benefit, and they are just not in enterprises for the most part.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think that's why they're
my experience as well. So, but at the end of the day, I'm assuming that will change at some point. Right, okay, let's get back. Really useful. Thanks for that, Christian Era.
Sorry for derailing.
No, good. Useful. I know. It's fascinating. Always interesting with that sort of thing. But thinking about this as well. I've often come across certain types of organization, and this is maybe an academia thing, but I've also seen it in other large organizations as well. If we're thinking about SaaS services still, whereby the IT department doesn't even realize about the fact that somebody's bought a SaaS service and is using it. And the reason I say academia is because quite often, certainly in large academia, departments are funded individually by grants. And they don't necessarily get their IT department involved in that process. But their IT department might be involved in backups. That's the IT department's job. They do backups. And they look after the network and they look after the foundation infrastructure. But when it comes to buying servers and buying software and buying that's left to the individual departments to deal with. So how many people out there do you reckon have had departments that have bought SaaS services where IT don't even know and therefore don't even know they're supposed to be backing it up?
I think there's a huge amount of them out there. I mean, there's this idea of this shadow infrastructure that's happening not just within academia, but within companies as well. So developers just can't be bothered waiting for somebody to provide them with a VM. They realize that on their company credit card, they can just go away and spin something up in one of the cloud providers, and they just start building stuff there. And there isn't any control around that at all. So there's an awful lot, and data may be in all sorts of places that the IT department don't really have a notion of or don't see at all.
Mm. I mean, have you guys seen that as well?
Solutions for that also.
What, sorry?
There are solutions to at least make it visible, so that then again IT can come back and say, hey, no, you shouldn't do that, or at least tell us.
But we should. But in theory, I know of companies whereby there's been a company cloud account, that everybody should be using. But then the company's found out there's actually about 10 other cloud accounts that have been utilized because of the fact that people just spanned them up themselves before, maybe even before the company account existed, and they've been using them ever since. So they're getting loads of bills from the same cloud provider, where in reality, and those individual sites are not being protected, not being backed up, not what have you. So even without SaaS services, it's still an issue.
It might be even simpler than that, right? I mean, a company that has M365 in OneDrive expects their users to put their files on OneDrive. What if 5 people decide, we're going to use Dropbox instead and put company data there? You don't know about it. And well, unless you monitor the endpoints and networking and whatever. But if you don't do that, you might have confidential data in a non-sanctioned file store somewhere that might not be protected at all, either via two-factor authentication that you might require or backing it up and whatever. I mean, all it takes is a credit card and the ability to sign up. So, and we can't really go back to the old days when I were an IT admin internally for a company where I could dictate everything.
Were they using mice back then? Is that,
Had to clean the balls and everything. So
I was going to say with balls. I was thinking more along the lines of punch tape and ticker tape.
Wasn't that punch bad, card. But yeah.
But it has spinning things on the computers. Yeah,
we had tape drives as well. So yeah, why not? But yeah, I mean, it's hard to stop anyone from doing that unless you have a whole kind of ecosystem around managing the access, right? And if you don't have that, it's a free-for-all, pretty much, because anyone can sign up for everything as a SaaS application, and you don't know about it. So,
but actually, also that is an old problem being broadened up and modernized, because when you take a look at production IT, in air quotes, what were they doing? They were like using old, outdated desktop PCs, putting their online software there for controlling production areas and stuff like that. And IT didn't know a thing about it until someone came in and said, "What are those IP addresses used for?" So
yeah, I mean, I mentioned this, right? I used to work in internal IT for a shipping company, so. One of the things I would then be able to do is basically dictate how people use their computers. So back then, everyone had local admin access. We removed that, of course. But that kind of opened a whole can of worms with, now my software A doesn't work and software B doesn't work. And
you're what's that?
What's A and B? We have never bought that. We don't have licenses for that. What is that? Oh yeah, I bought that on my credit card and got the installable from the vendor and just started using it. And since he had admin access, he could install it, right? So we had no clue what was going on the computers, basically.
I just do that after work to help my tennis club, sort of stuff.
But now, even if you lock down, you're not allowed to install software on your endpoint. When everything's a SaaS service you access through a browser, that's not something that stops you anymore. So it's the same thing. It's a different wrapping on it, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, and we're fighting the whole premise of, do you tie everything down to the point that it's secure, but in doing so make it almost unusable?
Yeah, and
then people want to circumvent it even more because it's just difficult to work with. So it's that balance all the time, isn't it?
Yeah,
They use their own computer and copy data across from their laptop to their own computer so they can mess with it.
Just copy your Gmail account when you send your stuff out. So, as we've seen recently as well.
I'm going to say, or delete it. That's what Lara was planning on doing.
Yeah.
So,
a strange sound in the background.
Is that a dog?
There's a dog outside.
A dog or a bird? Okay.
It's outside.
Is it a dog? Is it a bird? No, it's Superman. No.
Okay, then sorry.
Is it barking in a Scottish accent? That's what I want to know. Okay, so anyway, I was summing up for Pete's sake. Right, okay, so Lara, any thoughts on best practice for SaaS services for customers and businesses out there?
Yeah, so 2, I guess. 1 is, if you know the shared responsibility model, you should be protecting your data. Another one, and this is more difficult, is if you're looking at a new SaaS service, find out what is available in terms of protecting your data and being able to bring that data back out again. That is going to be more complex for people, but it's something that should be viewed right from the very start. How is my data protected wherever I put it?
It should be an evaluation criteria for the application itself. Ooh. From the business side.
What, you want an actual process?
That'll help.
Nice. Okay, good. Go with an actual process. Christian Lehrer.
Yeah, speaking of processes, put your SaaS applications also to your incident response plans. They are valuable parts of that nowadays, so you have to think about it and think about them, how to recover in case of an emergency.
If your SaaS provider provides you with some kind of logs, get it into your CM solution so you have that visibility in the same place.
The man loves a seam.
Or he loves some logs and it's really weird.
He just loves logs. Okay, good. Okay, no, not even going there. You know how my brain works.
Sadly, I do.
Yeah. I suppose I was going to say, really, if there are SaaS elements in your business, make sure your IT department knows, because at the end of the day, there's so many instances whereby these things grow organically and just suddenly appear, or I just started using this a few years ago and it's great. Have you ever thought about the fact that does your IT department know? That might get you in trouble, who knows? But more importantly, are you backing it up? And is it important that you back it up? If it was to go tomorrow, would you be upset? So just bear that in mind. But try and keep your IT department involved with those decisions.
They can't protect what they don't know about.
They can't. That's very true. Okay, so I think that probably more or less covers us up. Thank you again, Lara, for joining in. Very much appreciated. It's been great fun. So thanks for coming along.